Welcome, everybody. This is the Lawyer Show podcast. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. Today, we're going to try something a little different on the Lawyer Show podcast. We're going to talk about true crime, true law in real time. You're going to get real-time analysis from myself, your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal, criminal defense lawyer, board certified. I can do a lot of push-ups. We can talk about that. It would take too long. We're going to spend the next hour kind of cutting this case apart, an autopsy, if you will. I've got with me Kyle Therrian, who is also a criminal lawyer, more qualified than even I. He's here because of his looks, number one. Number two, because of his spot-on legal analysis, his ability for me to throw facts at him just at an instant notice and to get instant spot-on legal analysis. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. I'm excited. I'm very excited. This is, I haven't read your case, but I think this is going to be fun.
Well, I want to say that we have one of the things I've been kind of looking at and reading is we've heard the phrase trial of the century. Now, in my mind, that means
like a DWI, right?
It depends on what court it's filed in and who's prosecuting it. Because some of those cases can, in fact, be quite serious to a 24-year-old prosecutor and to our clients, to be sure. But yes, it depends. So a century is 100 years.
Most of the time, yeah.
Some of the time, unless it's a flood or unless it's a trial. There are probably about 500 trials of the century. So what I'm going to try to do, what I think I'm going to do here is let's just kind of talk about this. We'll pick one arbitrary trial of the century, and we'll just kind of be lawyers about it. That's not what we generally do on the Lawyer Show podcast, but this I think will be pretty interesting today. I hope it will be, and I'm kind of curious to get your reaction. I've dug my teeth a little bit into this case. We're going to talk today about the Sam Shepard case. Sam Shepard was convicted of murder in 1954, a very brutal slaying of his spouse. And this case has it all. If you've ever seen the movie with Harrison Ford called The Fugitive, there was also a TV series called The Fugitive as well. It's the basis of that. This was a trial. This was two trials of the century. This trial has it all. This case has it all. We have two jury trials. We have one U.S. Supreme Court opinion out of it. We even had a third jury trial, although that I really won't count that. That was kind of way after everybody in the case had really passed on. But anyway, the case kind of had it all. But I also I feel like we're going to get some spot-on legal analysis with this. So let's kind of dig into the Sam Shepard case and kind of talk about trial of the century number one, shall we?
I think we shall.
Okay. So let's get a little bit into the facts. So Sam Shepard was a physician living in Cleveland, Ohio, a community called Bay Village, which is on the shores of Lake Erie. Quite nice, Kyle?
Lake Erie is beautiful if you don't look at it.
Very good. You're a Michigander.
Indeed.
That's Lake Superior and Lake Michigan.
The Great Lakes are all part of Michigan. We own them all.
I don't think that Lake Erie doesn't touch Michigan, does it?
I believe it does.
This is the Lawyer Show, not the Geography Show.
Keep going with Sam Shepard. I'm going to Google this.
Okay, you Google this, Kyle. So it's a very lovely village on on the shores of Lake Erie. So this is a 30-year-old doctor, and he's married to his wife's name is Marilyn. They have one son who's 7 at the time. His name is Chip. One day, so I guess on July the 3rd, and I'm not sure what day of the week this is, but July 3rd, they have some friends over, and they're 2 or 3 children. The friends would be, I believe, the Aherns, and they watch the sun set over beautiful Lake Erie.
Which does not actually touch Michigan.
It does not.
I can report.
Okay, well, we have there. That's very important for our audience. But being a Michigander, you appreciate what it must be like to live in beautiful Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, and Lake Erie. So the sun sets over the lake. Everybody watches it, has a good time. The one couple takes their kids home. They sit. They put Sam and Marilyn, his wife, they put their 7-year-old Chip to bed. They watch a movie together, these two couples, and reportedly Marilyn is sitting on Sam's lap. Everybody's happy. Sam, who worked a shift earlier that day at the ER, Sam goes and falls asleep downstairs, which you would agree is a sign of guilt.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't go to bed with his wife.
That's a bad fact.
Yeah. Yeah. So right. I mean, obviously, some type of what we call in Yiddish Spielches going on between this married couple. Anyway, so he falls asleep downstairs. The other couple goes, and then what happens is she goes to bed apparently. Then what happens is, let's see. We'll fast forward to kind of how this sort of went down. At 5:40 in the morning, he picks up the phone, he being Dr. Sam Shepard, and what he does is he calls a guy by the name of Spencer Houck, who is the mayor of Bay Village, kind of like you're the mayor of kicking ass, and kind of in the same way.
Even in the town of kicking ass, 540 phone calls. I mean, what's up with that?
So that's a great question. So the evening, so at 5:40 in the morning, he calls the mayor, very excited, and he says, "I think they've killed Marilyn." And he says, "Get over here quick," Sam yells. So Houck, the mayor, runs over there. Also, I think he brings his wife Esther. They go to the house. Shepard's there. He doesn't have his shirt on. He's sitting in a swivel chair, leaning back, and he's holding his neck. His account was that he was sleeping downstairs in his happy marriage, sleeping downstairs, and that he heard Marilyn yell the name Sam. He runs up the stairs, and he sees what he described as a white form. Very racist in my mind. Would you agree?
No comment.
Okay. He sees what he characterizes as a white form standing next to his wife's twin bed. He says he has a struggle with the form, and then he's hit on the back of the neck, loses consciousness. When he comes to, he takes his wife's pulse because he's an ER doctor. Determines that she is in fact dead. And then he runs downstairs. He sees the white form.
Slide me that notepad. I've got too many facts already, and I'm going to need to start taking some notes.
Okay, that's fine. I understand that we have to give you the right things for your analysis.
Now, you know this about me, Jeremy, but overthink things.
Kyle does not overthink things. You think through them accurately. That's why you are here on the Lawyer Show podcast analyzing the trial of the century, the Dr. Sam Shepard murder trials. So so he chases the white form onto the beach. He claims to have a struggle with the white form, and he describes what he says a tall, bushy-haired. Now the form is tall and bushy-haired, so there's that. So was not a bald person. After that, he says he felt himself twisting or choking, and it terminated with his consciousness. So again, he says he loses consciousness a second time. When he wakes up, the sun is coming up, and somehow he's missing his T-shirt, he's missing his watch. That's when he runs into the house to call the mayor, because that's who I call when shit's out of control at my house. We call the mayor and get him over. No, I really don't. But 6 o'clock, the police come over about 20 minutes later. Officer Fred Drencan comes at the home. So she is, the victim, Marilyn, is lying face up in her bed, face turned towards the door. Her pajama top is pulled up. I think her breasts are exposed. I think her legs are kind of hanging over the bed on the other side, and her face is unrecognizable. They said over 20 curved gashes cut deeply in her face and scalp. Blood outlines her body, staining the cover and the pillow. The walls in the closets have dozens of spots of blood. And oh, by the way, Kyle, would it surprise you to know that Marilyn was 4 months pregnant? Heidi is not surprised. So do we convict him now or do we convict him later?
Well, let's start with some due process, huh?
Well, if you're into that sort of thing.
That's kind of my jam.
That's kind of that's your thing. That's why you went to law school. Yeah. So he finds what he thinks is a robbery or a staged robbery. Now,
I'm sorry.
Things are somewhat disheveled.
Who finds a robbery?
The officer who got there 20 minutes after the emergency call.
And I assume he has training and experience.
I'm certain that's how he testified. By the way, for all of the Lawyer Show podcast audience, all officers testify to their training and experience, which is kind of a magical way for them to get around not being an expert in certain things, right? We can give examples. Do you want to give a good example of training and experience?
One of my favorite questions about training and experience is actually in your kind of standard rubric for, what do we call it? The safe harbors.
The safe harbor cutoffs of cross-examination.
So you build the officer up and figure out what his legitimate areas of training and experience are, and then you ask him if he's expert in, how do you reform
waffle irons,
like tennis rackets.
Rackets.
What do you do to put the netting back on it? What is that?
Waffle irons. I think I asked about waffle irons, tennis rackets. I don't know. I think I had a trial years and years ago. I think you were there, where the officer claimed to kind of understand like what dialects come from different parts of Mexico. And this is an officer who was American. He was not from Mexico. But anyway, what happens is that's kind of a common thing that we sort of butt up against. So in his training or experience, this was either staged or maybe there was a robbery. Now, are you a football fan, Kyle?
I am.
The current quarterback of the Cleveland Browns is Baker Mayfield, former Oklahoma Sooner.
What happened to Johnny Manziel?
Yeah, that's another show. Oh. That's another lawyer show. But are you familiar if I threw out the name Otto Graham? Have you heard that name before?
Sure. Is he in this case?
Otto Graham, the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, happened to be a neighbor. And they happened to socialize with the Shepherds. Otto Graham goes to, he's driving by, I guess, on his way to training camp or to go lift weights or to do whatever you did to get ready for the 1954 season. He sees all the lights and all the crazy. Because he's Otto Graham, they say, well, come right into this crime scene. And so Otto Graham, at 6 o'clock in the morning, is poking his head around the crime scene of the trial of the century.
That's a weird twist.
Yeah, you didn't see that one coming today, did you?
Did he get interrogated?
I think because when you're the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, I think you probably get out of subpoenas. I don't know. I don't know.
Now, you know this about me.
Yes.
I subpoena who I want.
That's right. Kyle's not afraid to throw out the subpoena deuces, grab 'em. So Otto Graham said, and I quote, oh my God, it looks like someone stood in the middle of this room with a great big can of red paint and a brush and flicked it all around. This wasn't a couple of blows. Oh no, whoever did this, they had to be out of their mind. That's in his training and experience. So then the Cuyahoga County coroner named Sam Gerber, who is going to be a name we discuss quite a bit, they show up at 8 in the morning with another investigator. The investigator, Gerber, determines that Shepard's account makes little sense. He doesn't like the fact that there are neatly pulled out desk drawers like you would expect in a robbery.
This is the ME.
This is the ME, the medical examiner.
Whose job it is to
shut up.
Look at the body and
shut up.
Make a cause of death.
Shut up. If he sees drawers that are not evenly pull out, he can make that conclusion that this was staged. You know why, Kyle? Because his feelings and his common sense. You with me?
No, I'm with you. This sounds like, so far, par for the course trial of the century.
Well,
how things tend to go.
It gets better. So Gerber conducts his own investigation, assuming that it was a domestic homicide. Why not? As a result, he doesn't really go and attain fingerprint and blood evidence that you might expect, like if you were searching for the truth. So he does that.
I'm baffled right now.
Yeah, no, we never see things like this. Shut up. He is the man, okay? And you don't question Sam Gerber, okay?
Do your viewers, Jeremy, know what an ME does?
An ME is a medical examiner. Why don't you tell us what an ME does?
They look at dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Their
patients are dead.
Yeah. They, like if someone's got a cracked skull, they'll decide whether it could happen if you fell or somebody took a hammer to it, or, they might get some kind of rudimentary facts from the police and statements that were made, but fingerprinting and looking at drawers and that kind of stuff, that's for the guys with training experience.
Yeah, right. Okay, so on the trousers, so Gerber interviews Shepard for 10 minutes. On the trouser, he spots a large blood stain on the left knee, which guess what that tells Gerber? You're guilty just like I thought, because you've been kneeling in blood. Never mind the fact that, it sounds like there'd be a lot of blood anyway.
Do you want analysis yet?
Yeah, let's have it. Where are you on this?
I think I've solved it.
Okay.
No,
You'd be the first one in 54. It happened in 54.
I'm glad Otto Graham stopped by and talked about how it was like Sherwin-Williams accident.
Yes. Gone amok.
Because if this Shepard gentleman was able to only walk away from that scene with just a spot on the knee, we call that a good fact.
Well,
for him.
Now, I think later on we'll find out that we did not have sand in our hair from Lake Erie Beach. Another sign that we're lying.
Can we come back to Lake Erie?
Yeah.
It does touch Michigan. It's Ontario that doesn't.
Which is it? Do I need to get another Michigander up here?
Sure.
Kyle has been promised good barbecue after this, depending on his performance on the Lawyer Show podcast. This is his second appearance. He's been invited back. He also spent his morning in Tarrant County, which is the friendliest place on the planet to practice law. That's neither here nor there. So back to this, okay? So Gerber tells another detective, quote, "It's obvious the doctor did it." So he goes to order the detectives to visit Shepard in the hospital. And they spend a long time trying to get a confession out of him. It doesn't work.
How many officers?
Let me see here. 2 young detectives.
Did they block the door?
I hope so. One of them finally just gets frustrated and pissed off, and he says, "I think you killed your wife." And then at some point, Otto Graham reappears. He visits him in the hospital room, and then a defense lawyer by the name of Bill Corrigan, who is apparently very famous in Cleveland in the 50s, shows up.
Bill Corrigan, the lead singer of Green Day.
Perhaps. This Bill Corrigan died in 1961, but we'll check that.
Otto Graham's back?
Otto Graham's back. He comes back to the house room.
Football?
This is July, Kyle.
Okay.
So, and back then, didn't you have like part-time jobs when you were in the NFL? Wasn't like the NFL salary not enough?
They didn't have HBO Hard Knocks?
I guess not. I guess there was no drama. Maybe he wasn't out there tweeting all of his daily activities.
Otto's been helpful so far, though.
Yeah, no. We'll keep tabs of that as this goes along. Now, here's kind of where this case begins to get really fun. The Cleveland newspapers quickly grasped onto this. The lead headline of the newspaper the next day was, quote, "Doctor's wife murdered in Bay Village." Picture of her. No, they don't have a picture of her. She's too bloody. They have a picture of him holding his neck with a neck brace on, right? They did actually say
did you see
that
a plaintiff's lawyer before he saw a defense lawyer.
maybe they were there waiting for him at the hospital. We don't make bad lawyer jokes on the lawyer show. It's okay to make fun of insurance companies here.
Okay.
Let's lay off our friends in the plaintiff's bar. They get enough shit. Okay, so the paper thought it would be drug thieves or bludgeoning. So, but as you're going to see,
What was the first option?
drug thieves.
They had drugs in the house?
I don't know. Maybe, but maybe that would have helped. I'd suppose. You know, maybe he was prescribing a bunch of I don't know, opiates. So before long, there's a Cleveland Press. I guess he's the editor. His name is Louis B. Seltzer, and he kind of leads the charge in the media against Dr. Sam. And on July 8th, about 4 days later, he writes, I think, an op-ed that accuses the family of trying to thwart the murder investigation. A prosecutor is quoted as saying, "In my 23 years of criminal prosecution, I have never seen such flagrant stalling as in the case by the family of Dr. Samuel Shepard." This is in the paper. And you'll like this. What do you think of this fact, Kyle?
Who's saying this?
This is a prosecutor saying this to the Cleveland newspaper. And the next day in the newspaper, the July 9th, on page 1, the press reported Dr. Samuel H. Shepard declined to submit to a lie detector test for questioning about the slaying of his attractive wife. Do we? Are we seeing any issues here? Do we feel like the media is convicting this man? The media.
You need to change the venue for sure.
Oh, Kyle, you're ahead of us.
But something I just thought of. At any point in this story, does Drew Carey get involved?
You'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
Yeah, big Cleveland guy, right? So let's see. They criticize the investigation. They say that they're slow in getting to where they're going. And July 21, the press, the newspaper has a headline, quote, "Why no inquest? Do it now, Dr. Gerber."
Is an inquest some sort of legal term of art for them, or is that an
I don't
Ohio
know, but
concept?
this sounds like a lot of fun. You'll be surprised to know that there's a lady who comes up. Her name is Susan Hayes. Back in '54, they called her Sue Hayes. She was a medical person of some sort. Guess what she and Dr. Sam were doing on their free time? You want to guess?
Sleeping on different floors.
No.
Okay.
No. They were having an extramarital affair. And the good news is Dr. Sam was told by his lawyer, Mr. Corrigan, to lie about it to the police. Or to deny it. I guess not to answer questions. I wasn't there. I can't say. So he so that was kind of the issue. They thought that they wanted to prove that Maryland was the one fooling around. They did a DNA test. I don't know. This may be decades later. I didn't know that they could do this, but they did test. At some point, the fetus was tested, but the fetus was, in fact, Dr. Sam's progeny. Now, so Dr. Sam denies the affair, which I think we can say later on, you can already see this coming, backfires. Yeah. The jury can't see you shaking your head yes or no.
Backfire. Bad idea.
Possible
suspect. We're ruling her out immediately in our defense.
Yeah. I'd like to represent her. I mean, I think she might get out of this. I don't know that he will. So let's move on to this inquest.
Is this a legal
I have no
term
clue
of art?
what this is.
Is this inquest sounds a lot like maybe in the time Ohio had some sort of mechanism where you can prove your innocence?
This is kind of where we're going this. So you'll like these facts, Kyle. I want to know how these strike your lawyer fancies, okay? So the same day that the Cleveland Press editorialized and demanded this inquest, they scheduled Dr. Gerber, Mr. Gerber. Is an ME a doctor? Maybe. We'll call him doctor. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Texas they are, but we have real high standards of criminal justice.
Doctors get very, very, they get their feelings hurt very badly when you don't call them doctor. Goes to so this inquest is in a Bay Village high school gymnasium, packed full of watchers and fans. The bleachers are jammed, okay? They've got Dr. Sam Shepard with his neck brace at a table getting questions fired at him by Sam Gerber, Dr. Sam Gerber, the ME. He's there answering questions. His lawyer has to watch from the stands. And when the lawyer speaks up and starts saying things like, from the stands, starts saying things like, don't answer that, or this is bullshit, they forcibly remove the lawyer. And to the cheers of the crowd. You don't think this is fair, Heidi?
Huh. Like an inquest is like when you got a ME who's gone rogue, you can have a little trial about the cause of death.
Well, I think you have a right not to be there. And
sure,
if you are there, you might have the right to have your lawyer with you.
Well,
but see,
it's probably like a lot like a grand jury, right? Like you can,
except everybody in the town is there.
You tell.
And there's a pep rally and a band.
You tell the prosecutor, my guy's not testifying, he invokes the Fifth, or you can send him in and hope that, he knows how not to incriminate himself behind closed doors while you sit in the hallway.
Man, yeah, okay, so this was I think you could subpoena all these people who were there to they all witnessed the whole thing. They all witnessed this. So, but his sin was
Otto there?
It doesn't say.
All right.
And I'm using a law professor's.
Can I just say this seems a lot like a Simpsons episode where like the football player is kind of like like he's there, but he's also got a football game, but then he's also back at the scene. That's.
I think that
he's like one of the townspeople.
I think if you're trying to play your cards right to have barbecue after this, I think that just got you there.
Yeah.
I think that. I think that's very clear. So
Lenny and Mo.
Yes. Yeah. They
hang out at the bar. The two guys. Okay.
I'm aware, sir, of Lenny. Okay. So now, so after the inquest. After they cheer the removal of that annoying defense lawyer, the Cleveland Press then runs an editorial on page 1, quit stalling, bring him in. Okay. On cue, that evening at 10:30, they go and arrest him. The next day, he is indicted for first-degree murder, whatever that is, in Ohio.
Sounds like a bad one.
Yeah, I think my guess is that's the top of it. All sorts of different facts kind of start getting leaked out. So there's a lot of celebrity journalists who kind of show up on the scene. There's a lady by the name of Dorothy Kilgallen, I guess, was a syndicated columnist at the time. And Dorothy also was, I guess, a guest of some type on the show What's My Line? So she's kind of famous, and she's so famous, in fact, that the judge who's trying the case, his name is Judge Edward Blythen. He says, "Oh, Dorothy's here. Let's you and me have coffee in the back." Judge says to Dorothy, and we don't learn this until 1964, by the way. This is 1954, so we don't learn this. And so Dorothy decides it's not the best idea to say this out loud, at least not yet. She said in 1964 that when she got called back to the judge's chambers, the judge described the case.
When was it? This was during like an arraignment, or
this was like pretrial.
All right.
Yeah. He says this case is open and shut. This is the judge saying this. He's as guilty as hell, the judge explained. Do you feel like we have any grounds to recuse this man at this point, Kyle?
Well, I'd like to think so. Is he, certainly it's to a jury, so his opinion of guilt probably doesn't matter, but certainly the appearance of fairness is jeopardized at this point.
I mean, if I was like on trial, I'd be a little worried about that one.
That they say the inside thoughts out loud.
Yeah, I mean, those are all inside thoughts. I mean, yeah,
They have them anyway.
The man's thinking it. I mean, just Jesus, just shut up. I mean, you don't have to say it to people, much less the press. In the press, I mean, this lady was like conflicted. Dorothy Kilgallen. So over the years, she comes back and is like, I struggled with it. He said it was off the record, but then I just had a hard time living with myself after this.
That Lake Erie water they're drinking.
Man, yeah, not good like the Michigan water.
I think they lit Lake Erie on fire on accident once.
That
might have been a river, but it could be Lake Erie. It could be a river that goes to Lake Erie.
Could have been. Again, we'll research that one. We'll get back to the jury on that one. So let's see. Now, the defense had your idea, Kyle. They said, we're getting a little unfair publicity here, we feel. Let's move this whole thing. Let's move it. And guess what Judge Blythen did or didn't do?
Motion's denied.
Yeah, it was denied. Yeah, of course. So they deny it, so the trial stays in Cleveland. The jury, all but one member, admitting to having read about or seen television reports on the case.
Could they set that aside?
This is, again, your legal analysis is, I would say that your legal analysis today is 30 years ahead of where we are now.
You just have to promise that you're a fair person.
Your legal analysis as of 1954 was 30 years ahead of 1954 because I don't think that was the law then.
They didn't even have to set it aside.
Apparently they weren't asked. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but I don't think that was the legal standard. So the jurors, now you'll like this. How about pressure on the jury here? Each juror in the case had their names and photos published in the Cleveland newspaper. So, yeah, go ahead and acquit this guy now that we know who all you are. Now, after we come with our pitchforks and torches after Dr. Sam, you're next, juror, because, you're my neighbor, right? I don't think I've told you the verdict yet, or maybe I have of the 1954 trial, but things are not going so hot. All right, now, the jury, after they're impaneled, this is something that I wanted to look up. I didn't have time today. The jury gets taken on a bus to Sam Shepard's house. I don't think we can do that in Texas.
I don't know. You can do it in Oklahoma.
Take the jury to Sam Shepard's house?
Probably, if that's where the crime happened. In Oklahoma, you had, in other states too, but I know this because I'm a Sooner lawyer.
Isn't that an SEC school?
In fact, it will be. Yes.
Very exciting for them.
Yeah, you go see the scene of the offense. The judge and the jurors and the lawyers.
You said offense. You're presuming him guilty
of the relevant location.
You can't, but in Texas, I don't think you can.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's California. Heidi says they went to OJ's house. This is true, but I don't know that you can. Good question.
Well, in Texas, convictions delayed is justice denied.
Exactly. Whatever helps us get us there faster, right? Sam Shepard, they go to the child's room. Sam Shepard, Dr. Shepard sobbed at the side of the dresser of a stuffed teddy bear. Again, in my training experience, that equates with guilt, fake tears.
Taking notes.
You know what a good question to ask a witness is, Kyle? When a witness accuses somebody else of, this person's not being sincere, or they weren't being serious, or this person was lying to me, you ask them how do they detect sincerity or insincerity or anger. How do you detect if somebody's angry, witness? And then the witness just kind of blah, 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 blah. And then you ask the witness, okay, am I angry right now? And the witness says no. And then you say, I'd like the record to reflect that I am, in fact, angry.
Snark. I like it.
Thank you, Kyle. It works. Nah, sometimes. I don't know. It's fun. That's what's important, too. And if it helps the client, that's fine as well.
Sam Shepard would have been better with you.
In this first trial, I couldn't have done any worse. So, let's see. The trial, the state blames his infidelity, says that there was an argument about the infidelity because, of course, they were in the room. They know these things. And the defense says, no, we were happily married at the time. Let's see. The prosecution witnesses, they called Dr. Lester Adelson, basically told everybody we already knew, and he showed 8 million pictures of the bloody body, said this thing was very, very violent, okay, because it takes 2 days to determine that. Also kind of talks about, he did a little more detail stuff, and
they determined what the weapon was.
They did not determine what the weapon was.
They determined the amount of force that was used to inflict the wounds.
I don't think that they determined that either. I think they concluded that she was dead.
Ever take any pictures of Mr. Shepard's hands?
Shut up. God. Man, you just... Okay. Look, okay, smart guy. Now,
do they call a domestic violence expert?
That's another thing near and dear to our heart. Somebody who I'm sure has... We get a lot in our cases, I should back up. Okay, because domestic violence
Tread lightly.
Is a very serious topic.
Yes.
But I have lectured with TCDLA. I have published an article that has empirical data on the matter that discuss, and it's a very, very difficult subject for the reason that there's not a lot of hard science with it. There's not a lot of, we know domestic violence is out there. We know that there are a lot of the elements that the people who want a better criminal justice system advocate for, who want more strict penalties, advocate for, that there are cycles of violence, that there are certainly manipulative people out there, that there are certainly people out there that are controlling. But on the other end, a lot of domestic violence, if you believe the empirical data, can be what's called reciprocal domestic violence. When we're in trial, which means that families, married couples who engage in domestic violence, very dysfunctional to be sure, that they do it in a way that perhaps there's not a cycle of violence, perhaps perhaps they alternate being violent, starting fights. A lot of times alcohol is in the mix. A lot of times it's a broken home. A lot of times they fight about kids, about money, about whatever. But the point that Kyle is trying to make is that our district attorney's office throws up people who don't read studies, and they don't like to crack books, and those types of things are kryptonite. They like to get on the witness stand and just say, well, he's guilty because he's a he and he's over there, and our training and experience says he's guilty. Go ahead, Kyle, get me out of the ditch.
No, it's the the criminal justice system should loathe working backwards from the conclusion, right? And that's
not what Dr. Gerber did.
That's right. That's frankly what domestic violence experts who testify in criminal cases tend to do, and they may be right most of the time, but that's not our standard. That's not what we're trying to do. We work from evidence towards a conclusion, not conclusion backwards, and it's unfair.
The cycle of violence starts with the assumption that he's guilty, and then he's guilty, and because he's guilty, there is a cooling off phase, and the next phase is where they love each other again, and then he blows up again, and then he's guilty, right? He commits another offense. But the very first thing is that he's guilty. So in other words, he's guilty because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because he's guilty. So that's a part of it. And again, it is in many ways, it does assume a lot, but also when you you're correct that it does work backwards. What happens in a lot of domestic violence cases that I find is the police come out, they make an emotional decision about their arrest. They go out there and they decide who's guilty based kind of on their emotions, and then we kind of have this after-the-fact analysis where we try to shoehorn all of these things. And maybe they're right sometimes, and maybe they're not right sometimes. Anyway, Sam Shepard. Man, where were we? Okay, so
I got notes.
You've got your notes. So
I can do a recap. That's fine.
I think I'm good. So they called the patrolman, Fred Drenkin, who showed up there, who kind of gave his training and experience.
His last name was Drenkin?
Drenkan.
I like him.
So Patrolman Fred comes in there and basically says, based on his emotions and his experience, that, well, there's no prowlers around that night, and there's no signs of struggle in the home. Okay, good point. No indication of forced entry. Maybe a good point there. Now, the star witness was Dr. Sam, Dr. Sam Gerber, the ME, not Dr. Sam.
Not our doctor.
Not. What do you mean our doctor? We're neutral here.
Right.
Dr. Sam Shepard, the defendant, he testifies later. But the coroner comes in and he shocks everybody. First off, he sits there and, of course, he lays out why he thinks the defendant's guilty. But then he comes out and he says, I looked at the pillow behind her head, and if you squint your eyes hard enough, I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I'm not even paraphrasing. I'm sort of just doing what I do. He says, if you squint your eyes and you look at the pillow hard enough, you can see a surgical instrument imprint. Guess what kind of professional, Kyle, would have a surgical instrument? Maybe an ER doctor?
I was going to say medical examiner.
Well, we haven't checked his alibi yet. I would like to hear what he has to say. I don't think the man's still alive. I would bet he's not. But he says he could make out a surgical instrument. The defense jumps to their feet, and they don't like this because they don't like America. Right, Kyle?
Or 702.
Or Rule 702. That's the rule about expert witnesses, or 3914, because I think you might have to not have to disclose if there's a report of this or something like that. But this is, and they pass it around to the jury. The jury kind of looks at it like, oh, yeah, if you blur your eyes hard enough. And there's not a lot of empirical data, I think, is our point, if we're upset. They call a detective who comes in and says that they lied. They call in Susan Hayes, who is she's the girlfriend, and they pointed out that this whole thing was a little dishonest. Now the defense comes in, and the defense says their main thrust of their defense is, look, the guy was injured in ways that he can't fake. They said he was touching his neck. There was a doctor who examined him that morning, said there are muscle spasms and involuntary movements in the back of his neck. That's something he can't fake. They said he was blacking out, and they had to drag him practically out of the house and into the hospital based on his conditions. One of the nurses says his feet were all shriveled up as if he had been in water in a long time, and I think he said that he had woken up, right, kind of halfway in the water of the lake. A radiologist testified that Dr. Sam had a probable fracture of his second cervical vertebra. That sounds hard to do on your own, but whatever. There was swelling at the base of his skull. So he did have some medical injuries to do that. So they decide that they're going to call Sam Shepard to the stand. So he testifies in his own defense.
Again.
Well, right. He had already successfully navigated the inquest.
The inquest didn't go well for him, did it?
No, it didn't. Oh, in fact, I actually skipped over something. So after the inquest, after the press said we're not happy with how this is going, they interviewed Dr. Sam for, I want to say, 22 or 23 hours straight. Probably didn't give the man cigarettes. I wonder if not, maybe a bathroom break or not. Maybe there's a little good cop, bad cop going on.
The press interviewed him, or the cops did?
The cops did. But the press, they think in response to what the press said. So, let's see. The jury. Oh, by the way, Dr. Sam also got caught at one point kissing a patient in a car. At one point, that probably didn't help him. They do their closing argument. They said they pointed to no signs of struggle. They pointed, and the state made a couple of I think, pretty decent points. They said, how could the assailant land 30 So he's downstairs. He hears her yell Sam, right? So she's conscious. He goes upstairs, and they're saying, okay, so obviously she was conscious, but then by the time you got up the stairs, they had struck her 35 times. Now, maybe his retort is, they did this after they had knocked me out too, or the white form had knocked me out as well. So that's a question. And let's see. They also accused him. Basically, they said, look, man, you all these injuries, you just, you faked them because you jumped off the porch, or you jumped off your roof, or you did something to kind of fake these, or you fell down a flight of stairs on purpose to kind of do this. And the defense lawyer argued in his close, you have the opportunity to turn back the tide, to tell the people of the nation, of the world, that the constitutional right to a fair trial still lives. Jury said no. 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 They found him guilty of second-degree murder, not first-degree murder. I don't know what difference that made. He got 10 years. 10 years? Hold on. Did he get more than 10 years? How much did he get? He got a lot.
10 years?
No, he got more than that.
I was going to say, I have a client who once told me why you get 10 years for a murder.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's lawyer show friendly, if I can repeat what he said here.
Let's stay on task.
Okay.
Stay on task. Let's see. The Cleveland Press editor Louis Seltzer publishes an autobiography trumpeting his role to bring Sam Shepard to justice. Now, the worm kind of turns for Sam Shepard in a few different ways here in the years that follow after his conviction. Dr. Paul Kirk, a criminologist in California, he did his own investigation to this. He said the murderer had to be left-handed. He thought that the flashlight was a murder weapon, and he thought that somebody who hated the Shepards could have done this. I don't know why he concluded that. He also reported that some of the blood in the room belonged to neither Sam nor Maryland. A swimmer who lived next door to the Shepards is swimming in beautiful Lake Erie one day, and guess what he finds, Kyle?
In Lake Erie?
In Lake Erie. Well, there's probably a lot of shit that he found.
Probably an old tennis shoe or tire.
How about a damaged, dented flashlight?
I mean, I believe that.
Okay.
You can name just about anything
Batteries
in Lake Erie, I believe it's in there.
Okay. In November 1959...
was this somehow in proximity to Sam's house on the lake?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where you been, man. This was like the first.
I didn't start taking notes till I realized this was an hour-long show.
So some guy who washed windows at the Shepard house, about the time of a murder, he was picked up for larceny. The police search his home, I'm sure, with a valid warrant, and they happen to find a cocktail ring owned by Marilyn Shepard. I don't know what a cocktail ring is. Heidi, who we will never allow on the microphone again. No, we are allowed. I don't know why you don't have a mic. We should probably put you on the microphone again. But what is it again? What's a cocktail ring?
Like a very
A decorative
decorative ring that's usually not precious stones.
ring that's not precious stones. Okay.
This was in Lake Erie?
This was with the window washer who got picked up for larceny. And not only that, a couple of cops who were just they're just messing with the guy. They said, what's your blood doing in their house? And guess what? His name is Eberling. That's the window washer. Guess what he says? Guess what this genius says? I'm sorry. It's in there because I cut myself when I was in there on something. So he admits his blood's in the house. They make a TV show called The Fugitive, which people always kind of figured. But The Fugitive is about a doctor who is in prison. He breaks out of prison, and he's trying to find the real murderer of his wife. Harrison Ford later stars in the movie, right, after the trial of the century here. So in 1961, a brash young defense lawyer by the name of F. Lee Bailey files a writ of habeas corpus, and he has this concocted notion that there was too much pretrial publicity before the trial, and that was somehow, what did you call it, Kyle, a due process violation?
Due process
violation. And he marries, Dr. Shepard marries a lady by the name of Ariane Tabin-Johans.
Is he out of jail?
No, this is like a lady who's writing him from jail. He never broke out. I don't know. As far as I know, he never broke out. Her brother-in-law, Ariane's brother-in-law, was Dr. Joseph Goebbels of Nazi heritage.
This is definitely The Simpsons.
That was a bad PR move on his behalf, but whatever. I mean, Ariane writes him, and they fall in love. Let's see. In 1964, the federal district judge, Carl Weinman, reverses his sentence. The Sixth Court of Appeals reinstates it, and then the United States Supreme Court in February of 1966 overturns it for good. And they said that it was a mockery of justice, the press and and all the publicity surrounding it. They
Funny
said,
story about mockeries of justice.
Yes, let's have that.
I once handled a case that was found to be a mockery of justice, but different outcome. Mockeries of justice now, actually, we affirm those.
So Kyle wants. So I will say this. I think that. So Kyle handled a case. We won't mention the county. We can mention the county.
Cook County. I'm not allowed to go back. I was explicitly told.
Cook County. They had a trial where they put a what was it? The brother of the prosecutor.
Stepbrother of the prosecutor. I hope he's watching.
Okay, I doubt it. But
okay, and the brother of the judge. I hope she's watching.
They put these people on a jury, or the people showed up for jury duty, and these two folks didn't say anything to anybody about it.
They were
right?
Quiet.
They didn't say so they sneak onto the jury. They convict the defendant. You came in saying, "What the actual fuck are you people doing, putting your relatives on the jury?" And they told you, "Well, this isn't Collin County," and you said, "Yeah, in Collin County we don't put our relatives on the jury." Anyway, but the courts in Texas came back and said, "This is a mockery of justice,
and
but it's okay here."
It's yep.
Okay, there's that. Now, but the Supreme Court came back and said, yeah, this is so to your point, Kyle, about the jurors testifying whether or not they could be fair or not fair. I think this is the case that says that. Okay. So in other words, you again are 30 years ahead of your time. The jury can't see you're nodding yes and no. You have to acknowledge that this is true.
I know.
Okay. So we have a second trial of Dr. Sam Shepard, October 1966. Everybody takes a bit of a different approach. The government abandons the surgical instrument thing, right, about the Rorschach test, that was there. They kind of hid Dr. Sam Gerber, the ME. They kind of hid him a little more, but he still testified. They asked, F. Lee Bailey gets him to admit on cross-examination, yeah, I looked everywhere, all across America, for a surgical instrument that would match what happened on the pillow, and yeah, I couldn't find one, which I think is pretty effective. Then they did not call Susan Hayes, the lady. They did not call her back to testify in this trial. There was a big deal made about blood spots that were found on Sam Shepard's watch. The criminologist from California came back and looked at that, and he said that was contact transfer, that the blood that was on his watch was transfer. The state calls a rebuttal witness who says, and when F. Lee Bailey asks him, what'd you think of the blood on his watch? That witness says, I didn't see any blood on a watch. I don't think I paid any attention to it. So I think that was pretty good for the defense. Bailey does not recall Dr. Sam to the stand. So Sam Shepard does not testify in his defense on this one. They tried to do F. Lee Bailey tries to go to a plausible alternate killer theory, which we have some interesting law in Texas about alternate theories. Do you want to explain to our jury what the nexus has to be? Or I can, if you want. I've had to deal with this in court. You can't go into court and blame somebody else for a crime, not without enough evidence.
Well, I think that might be overturned at this point, but at least at one point it was that you need to have
a nexus.
Something like probable cause that the other person that you're blaming is, like, you have an actual burden. You can't just throw it up as a theory. You have a factual burden. You can,
right, and it's a real tricky area of law. So, in other words, okay, so it's interesting. So here, do you want to hear who F. Lee Bailey wanted to blame for this? He wanted to blame the mayor and the mayor's wife, because they were trying to infer that there was some hanky-panky going on between the mayor and her, and Marilyn, the deceased, and that Esther came and did this, perhaps with the help of the mayor, which could explain why somebody's knocking out Dr. Sam from behind when he runs up into the room. But the problem that he had in the trial was that he just didn't have any evidence that Esther Houck or the mayor did this. So they're not going to let you put the Houcks on trial in Dr. Sam's trial. You can point out evidence that shows that it could be an alternate suspect here, but I don't think you can go to the level. I don't think you can get quite that far, and it doesn't sound like they let him go that far either.
Sucks.
Yeah. No. So they acquit. They acquit him this time. Jury acquits him this time. And let's see.
Then we get an expunction, but you have to wait 2 years?
No, I think you're entitled. In Texas, you can get these things off your record, but I don't know if you can force the Cleveland newspaper to quite. I think you could microfiche it.
There you go.
Yeah, I think you could. I think that's how you could go back there and do that. So, let's see. So then, so they acquit him the second time. Now, Dr. Sam he lives after he's acquitted and he's released. He goes back and he practices medicine again. He lives a very, very, I don't know if you could call this happy, but he lives for 4 more whole years outside as a free man in the free world. He was addicted apparently to barbiturates, and he exhibited some symptoms of kleptomania. Ariane Tabel Johannes, Joseph Goebbels' sister-in-law. I think he would be dead. I think or hiding. I'd have to look. But she divorces him because he has infidelity issues even in his 4 years of freedom there. Strained relationship with his son, and he makes his debut in 1969 as a pro wrestler using the name Killer Shepard. Are we still on The Simpsons? You still think that... You think I would pick just any trial of the century, Kyle, to come here and throw at you?
It sounds like you worked backwards from the result.
Actually, I had no clue that this thing...
started with Killer Shepard, the wrestler.
I had no clue this thing was this bonkers. I had no clue, really. So at age 70, in 1970, at the age of 46, Dr. Sam Shepard collapsed in his kitchen, vomiting blood.
How old?
46.
Oof.
Yeah. He had liver disease. So there was that. Let's see. So the mystery is always kind of kept going, right? Some folks have never let it go. There's books out there, some that argue that he's innocent, some that are out there that are argued that he's guilty. I want to say that the son, Chip, brings a civil lawsuit in 1997 suing Cuyahoga County to say that his father was wrongly imprisoned. So they have a civil trial there, and the jury there said, no, we think your dad was probably guilty. So that happened. So there's 2.5. That's the 2.5. That's the 2.5 trials that we had here. What did we learn here, Kyle? Just to quote a famous movie, what was it? Burn After Reading, the very end. You've seen this one, yeah?
Not enough to quote the last line.
So, man, very disappointing ending to this show.
This when he was working on his rowing machine?
It's the Coen brothers. You remember that part of it. So the Coen brothers, the movie, at the end of the movie, the CIA guy says, well, what do we learn here? I want to know what we learned out of this. Out of this trial of the century, what's our take home here?
I mean, you and I knew this. Our criminal justice system is just, I guess good enough most of the time.
I mean,
but not all the time.
So I would think, now my general impression is probably Dr. Sam Shepard he probably did this.
Is that your takeaway?
Probably.
I just acquitted him, so.
Sure. Look, I mean, we can't change these things, but this investigation was trash. The due process was trash. Yeah, I mean, you're with me on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Otto fucking Graham sticking his head in about an hour after this happened, right? I mean, that's not good. You don't need the quarterback of your local football team sticking his head into what ought to be a fairly sterile situation. And really, I would hope today the way that this would be handled would be just a much more thorough investigation. And if there is a lot more evidence that points to Dr. Sam, maybe we would see it. And then again, maybe not. I don't know how you explain all those injuries that he had. I think that's very problematic for the state. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can fake that stuff. I don't think you can fool that stuff. The fact that his feet are waterlogged, I think that's a very bad fact for the state, for the government. Maybe there was more than one person who was her assailant.
I'm still on that blood stain on the knee, Jeremy.
Kyle has a 2:00 appointment, and it's 1 already, and it's going to be our goal to get barbecue. You've been watching the Lawyer Show podcast. This has been Trial of the Century #1, the Dr. Sam Shepard, a.k.a. the Fugitive Extravaganza. I've learned things.
I think this went well.
I think so, too.
I liked it. Thank you for having me.
Goodbye.